The door slammed so hard the dust came loose from the ceiling. I remember the sound more than the pain, not because it hurt physically, but because of how final it felt. "Enjoy your little timeout, Belle," one of them said through the metal door, laughing like it was a game. Then came the lock. Click. That tiny sound decided the next several hours of my life. The storage room was dark except for a thin strip of light under the door. It smelled like old paper, bleach, and something sour I couldn't place at first. I realized later it was spilled cleaning chemicals mixing with damp cardboard. My backpack was thrown in here with me, books scattered, my phone taken. I pressed my hand against the door. No answer. Outside, I could hear their voices fading down the hallway like nothing had happened, like I didn't exist anymore. What they didn't know was simple. I wasn't supposed to be in that school at all. And more importantly, I wasn't just some quiet girl they could forget about. I was the daughter of someone they would later wish they had never heard of. But in that moment, I was just a girl sitting on a cold floor, waiting for a door that wasn't going to open on its own. At first, I told myself it would be quick. A joke gone too far, but minutes passed, then an hour, then more. No teacher came looking, no announcements, no footsteps stopping outside the door. That's what didn't make sense. Because schools notice when a student disappears, unless someone made sure they didn't. And even stranger, why did the girls look so confident when they locked me in? Like they knew nothing would happen afterward, like they had done it before. I sat there in the dark, listening to the building around me continue like I wasn't inside it. And for the first time, a strange thought came to me. Why does it feel like I'm not supposed to be found? Before I continue, I want to know something from you. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it? Because stories like this always feel different depending on where you grew up. School halls, strict schools, quiet towns, big cities. And if you're new here, you might want to subscribe, because what starts as a school story turns into something no one in that building was prepared for. My name is Belle. I was 16 when this happened. To the school, I was just another scholarship student who kept to herself. Quiet, always on time, never caused trouble. That was the version of me they knew. But what they didn't know was that I didn't grow up like them. I grew up in rooms where people whispered instead of spoke loudly. In houses where names carried weight I didn't fully understand yet. My father wasn't just gone. He was something people avoided talking about directly. And my mother had taught me something simple when I was younger. Stay small in places that don't understand you yet. So I did. At school, I stayed small. I didn't correct people when they misunderstood me. I didn't argue when they assumed things. And I definitely didn't tell anyone who my father really was, because I didn't want attention. I wanted normal. But normal didn't seem to want me back. It started a week before the storage room. A group of girls, popular in the way schools decide popularity without asking anyone's permission. They didn't like me for a reason I never fully understood. Maybe because I didn't react. Maybe because I didn't try to belong to them. Or maybe because people like that can always tell when someone doesn't need their approval. The leader was a girl named Kara. She smiled like she was always performing for an audience that wasn't there. First, it was small things. My God, she always looks like she's lost. That outfit looks like it came from a donation bin. Then it escalated. My locker was opened and closed too hard. My notebooks moved. My name written incorrectly on purpose. And every time I reported it, nothing changed. The response was always the same. We'll look into it. But nothing was looked into. Not really. And I started noticing something worse. They weren't afraid of consequences, which meant they either believed they wouldn't come, or they knew exactly how far they could go before someone stopped them. The day it happened started normally. Too normally. That should have been my first warning. Kara walked past me in the hallway. She didn't say anything, just smiled. That kind of smile that doesn't belong to a teenager. It belongs to someone who already knows the ending. Second period ended, then third, then lunch. And after lunch, when I walked toward my next class, they were waiting. 3 of them, not crowded, not rushed. Just positioned like it had already been planned. "Hey, Belle," Kara said casually. "Can you help us carry something real quick?" I hesitated. Something about her tone felt off, but I followed anyway. That was my mistake. We walked past classrooms, down a side hallway I didn't usually use, and stopped in front of a storage room door. I remember asking, "What is this?" Kara shrugged. "Just drop it inside." The moment I stepped forward, I felt the shove. Not hard enough to injure, just precise enough to move me inside. Then the door slammed and locked. At first, I didn't panic. I tested the door, called out, listened. Nothing. That was when confusion started turning into something colder. Because locking someone in a school doesn't happen by accident. It requires confidence. It requires certainty no one will interrupt you. I sat down slowly, listening to the building outside. And I realized something uncomfortable. They didn't just want to hurt me. They wanted me to disappear for a while. And someone had allowed that to feel safe for them. Which meant this wasn't random, it was practiced. Hours passed, I don't know how many. Time stopped feeling reliable. But then a sound outside the door, not footsteps, not students, something heavier. Slower, a pause. Like someone standing still on the other side, not deciding whether to open it or keep me inside. And right before the light under the door shifted, I heard a voice I didn't recognize say quietly, "So this is where they put her." The voice outside the storage door stayed there longer than it should have. "So this is where they put her." Then silence. No unlocking, no rescue. Just footsteps fading away like I was already filed away as something irrelevant. I sat in the dark longer than I admitted to myself later. Not because I was afraid, but because I was calculating something I didn't understand yet. How many people in a building full of adults could ignore a student missing for hours? That question stayed with me, because it meant one of two things. Either I wasn't supposed to be found, or they already knew I was there. The next day, they acted like nothing happened. That was the first real sign. Kara walked into class smiling, flipping her hair, talking loudly to her friends like she hadn't helped trap someone in a locked room. When I entered, she looked at me once, just once, then smiled again. "Wow," she said casually, "you actually showed up." A few girls laughed. I didn't respond. That was my pattern, silence. It made them bolder. "You know what I heard?" One of her friends added, loud enough for the class. "She probably got in here because of someone rich paying for her." Another leaned forward. "No, I heard it's worse." Kara turned slightly. "She sleeps with older men to afford tuition." The room reacted instantly. Whispers, small laughs, phones pretending not to record. I felt heat rise in my chest, but not anger, something sharper, recognition. Because lies like that aren't random. They're constructed, designed, and repeated only when they're safe to repeat. I told myself one thing in that moment, do not react the way they expect, so I didn't. I wrote down notes instead. Every face, every laugh, every person who didn't correct them, because silence from others is also participation. And I was starting to see the real structure of the room, not students, a system. It didn't stop in class. Outside the building, they waited again. 3 of them, Kara in the center like always. "You're walking home alone again?" she asked. I kept walking. She stepped in front of me. "Or are you meeting your sugar daddy?" Her friend laughed. Another added, "How much does he pay you per assignment?" That was the first time I stopped. Not because it hurt. Because I realized something worse. They didn't believe it had to be true. It just had to be said loudly enough that others stopped questioning it. I looked at them. Calm, too calm, and said nothing. But I was scared. Yes, they used to scare me. Kara tilted her head. "You're really boring, you know that?" Then she leaned closer. "Could you tell him to buy you some new clothes, too?" She pointed at my shirt with her freshly done manicured nails. They all laughed then. A big chuckle. I tried to stop her. She just pulled my hair and the other tried to push me a bit. I almost lost my balance and my backpack fell down. I tried to pick it up when she kicked me and within seconds I was on the ground. They all laughed at me. "There. Thaw's your place. Keep it in mind, you piece of shit. People like you always end up used up and forgotten." Nearby people watched, but no one came to stop them. I picked up my stuff and I walked past them, almost ran. That was the moment she smiled wider. Because silence to them wasn't strength. It was permission. 2 days later, it escalated again. The art room smelled like paint, clay, and damp paper towels. I liked it there. It was the only place people pretended not to notice you too much. I was mixing colors when I felt someone behind me. Kara, she leaned over my shoulder. "You know what's funny?" I didn't turn. She continued. You act like you belong here. She knocked my brush off the table. Paint spilled, slowly spreading across my sketch. Then she spoke louder. Does your rich boyfriend buy you paint too? A few students looked up, watching, waiting. I crouched down to pick up the brush. Kara stepped on my hand, not hard enough to break anything, just enough to make it intentional. A teacher was in the room. She saw it, and said nothing. That was the moment something inside me shifted again. Not emotion, understanding, because silence wasn't accidental anymore. It was structured. They don't fear consequences. They don't fear authority. They assume alignment. That meant someone, somewhere, had already decided I was not worth protecting. And that changed everything. Because now it wasn't just bullying. It was permission-based harm. The rumors escalated the next morning. I heard it in the hallway before I even reached my locker. She pays her tuition in cash, right? No way she works. She definitely has someone funding her. Kara stood with her group like she was directing it. When she saw me, she raised her voice deliberately. Hey, Belle, how's your rich client? That one made some of them laugh louder. I closed my locker slowly, then she stepped closer. You don't even deny it anymore, she said. Is it because it's true? I looked at her, and for the first time I answered. No, she tilted her head. No what? No, it's not true. She smiled like she had been waiting for that. Then prove it. I didn't respond because that's the trick. They don't want truth, they want reaction. And I finally understood the game. That afternoon, I noticed something strange. A teacher glanced at me in the hallway, then looked away quickly. Not neutral, avoidant, like acknowledging me required effort they weren't willing to spend. That detail mattered more than the bullying, because students follow patterns, but adults maintain them. And now I had confirmation, the system wasn't blind. It was selective. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the storage room again, not the darkness, but the confidence in their actions. People don't trap someone for hours unless they believe. It won't be punished or it will be covered up, and that second option implied something heavier. Coordination, protection, or fear of something bigger than school rules. I turned on my phone, typed notes, every incident, every name, every detail, because I was starting to understand something important. This wasn't random cruelty. It was organized social targeting, and I had only seen the surface. The next morning, Kara didn't bully me first. She waited, outside the classroom, smiling differently this time, not playful, not mocking, something closer to certainty. Then she said quietly, You know what's weird, Belle? I didn't respond. She stepped closer. No one here knows who you really are. A pause. Then she added, But I think someone is about to find out. And for the first time since this began, I felt something shift outside the school's control. Not fear, not anger. Recognition that the story was about to stop being local. You know what's weird, Belle? Kara's voice lingered even after I walked past her. No one here knows who you really are. I didn't turn around, but I felt it. Not fear, pattern recognition. Because threats like that don't come from nowhere. They come from information. And information usually means someone has been watching longer than I realized. The next morning, something changed in the school. Not obvious, not dramatic, subtle. Teachers who used to ignore me now looked up when I entered a room, then looked away too quickly. One of them paused mid-sentence when I walked past. Another closed a laptop slightly too fast. That was new. And it meant only one thing: someone had asked questions about me, but not loudly, quietly, privately, which is always worse. Because private questions usually come from people with authority. At lunch, I overheard it. 2 teachers near the cafeteria line. She's still enrolled under that name. Yes, but the records, they don't fully match the sponsorship file. I stopped walking. Sponsorship file. That wasn't a normal school term. One of them lowered their voice. It came from a private fund, not parents. The other paused. Then who? I walked past before I heard the rest. But something had already clicked into place. Someone was paying. Not me, not my current life. Someone connected to something I wasn't being told about. Kara didn't wait long. She never did, first period. She walked in late, intentionally loud, slammed her bag onto the desk, then looked directly at me. You know what I think, she said casually. I think you got moved here for a reason no one's saying out loud. A few girls laughed. I didn't respond. She stepped closer. People don't just appear in schools like this unless someone's hiding them. One of her friends added. Maybe she's here because she's running from something. Kara smiled. Or someone. The class shifted. I stayed quiet, because now the rumors were evolving from money to identity, and that meant escalation was no longer random. It was being guided. Later that day, the art room again, same smell, same quiet corners, but not the same atmosphere. Kara was already there, waiting. You ever wonder, she said without looking at me, why no one checks your background properly? I set my bag down. Didn't answer. She turned. That's not normal, Belle. Then she knocked my sketchbook off the table again, pages scattered. People like you usually have paperwork, history, records. She crouched slightly. You don't. That was the first time she sounded less like a bully, and more like she was repeating something she had been told. She's not guessing anymore. Someone is feeding her direction. That realization changed the weight of everything. Because now the bullying wasn't just emotional, it was informational probing. They weren't only hurting me, they were testing reactions, seeing what breaks. And that meant someone else cared about the result. They cornered me again after school. Kara, two girls behind her, more confident than before. You know what we think now, she said. I kept walking. She stepped in front. We think you're lying about everything. One of them laughed. She probably doesn't even live where she says she lives. Kara tilted her head. Do you even have parents, Belle? That one landed differently, not because it hurt, but because it was aimed with intention now. They were no longer improvising. They were targeting structure. I looked at her, still didn't respond. And that silence again made her smile because she thought it meant weakness. That night I got my first strange call, unknown number. No voicemail, just silence. Then a click. I stared at the screen for a long time because silence on the line is never random. It's confirmation that someone is checking if you answer. That meant one thing. I wasn't just being watched at school anymore. The next morning, I noticed something new. A black car outside the school gate, parked too long. Engine running. No one stepping out, just watching. And for the first time, Kara didn't smile when she saw me enter the school. She looked past me, like she was waiting for something else, something bigger. Third period. Hallway. Kara finally said it directly. You should stop pretending, Belle. I stopped walking. She stepped closer. Because someone is already looking for you. A pause. Then she added softly, and when they find you, I don't think this school is going to matter anymore. That was the first time her voice didn't sound like a bully. It sounded like she was repeating a warning she didn't fully understand herself. I looked at her, and for the first time I asked a question. Who told you that? Kara didn't answer immediately, just smiled slightly, and said, You'll see. That night the black car was still outside the school, but this time it wasn't alone. A second car arrived, and someone finally stepped out, looking directly at the building, like they already knew exactly where to look. The black car was still outside the school when I arrived. Same position, same silent engine, same feeling that something was watching without permission. But this time, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Kara did too, because when I walked through the gate, she wasn't smiling. She was watching the car, like she was expecting it to move, or waiting for it to confirm something. That was new, and it meant whatever game she thought she was playing had rules I hadn't seen yet. First period started normally, too normally again. That pattern was becoming familiar now, but halfway through class, the door opened. A teacher stepped in with a clipboard, and behind her, another student being escorted. Kara leaned toward her friend. Watch this, she whispered. The student being escorted was a quiet girl named Mina. She looked nervous, eyes scanning the room. The teacher pointed to an empty seat. Sit here for now. Mina nodded quickly and walked in, and that's when Kara spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Oh great, another charity case. A few girls laughed. Mina froze mid-step. The teacher hesitated but didn't correct her. That silence mattered more than the insult, because silence from authority is permission in disguise. Mina sat down, hands shaking, and I noticed her eyes flick toward me, like she was looking for safety she wasn't sure existed. At lunch, it escalated again. Mina was sitting alone when Kara and her group approached. I heard it before I saw it. She's probably like you, one of them said. Quiet, cheap, acting like she belongs here. Mina stood up slightly. Can you please stop talking like that? She said softly. Her voice wasn't strong, but it was brave. I didn't do anything to you. Kara tilted her head. Oh, you didn't. She stepped closer. Then why are you sitting here? Mina shook her head. I don't have anywhere else. Kara laughed. Exactly. That was the moment the tone shifted. Not teasing anymore. Control. Mina turned slightly toward me, and for a second she looked like she might walk over, but before she could, Kara blocked her again. You should stay where you're placed, she said casually. Mina's voice cracked slightly. Please just leave me alone. That please hit differently, because it wasn't directed at one person. It was directed at a system that didn't respond. A teacher nearby heard it, looked up, paused, then looked back down at their phone. That was the moment Mina realized no one was coming. After school, it got worse. Mina was walking alone. Kara followed her, so did two others. I followed at a distance this time, not because I wanted to intervene immediately, but because I wanted to see how far this would go without interruption. Kara stepped in front of Mina near the gate. You know what I think, she said. Mina shook her head quickly. Please, I don't want trouble. That sentence was a mistake because it confirmed vulnerability. Kara smiled. Oh, you don't want trouble? She looked back at her friends. She doesn't want trouble. They laughed. Mina took a step back. I just want to go home. Kara leaned closer. Home, pause, do you even have one? Mina's eyes filled instantly. Stop, but Kara kept going. You talk like you belong here, but you don't even have enough money to dress like the rest of us. Mina's voice broke. That's not true. Kara stepped closer again. Then prove it. Silence. Mina couldn't. And that silence made them laugh louder. A crowd started forming, not large, just enough. People who pretend they're not watching. Kara turned slightly. Tell them, she said. Tell them why you're really here. Mina shook her head violently. I don't know what you want from me. Kara sighed dramatically. See, always acting confused. Then she pointed at Mina. She's here because her parents begged for scholarships. A few laughs. Mina stepped back again. I didn't do anything wrong, Kara interrupted immediately. No one said you did. Then softer, that's the problem. I stepped forward, not loudly, not aggressively, just enough. That's enough. Kara turned immediately. Oh, look, she said. She talks. Mina looked at me quickly. Relief flickered in her face, but it was fragile. I looked at Kara. Leave her alone. Kara tilted her head. Why? I didn't answer fast enough. That hesitation gave her space. Oh, she said slowly. You care. Mina looked between us. Please, she said again, softer this time. To me, not them. Just please stop. Her voice shook. That wasn't a demand, it was surrender. And Kara smiled wider because of it. Kara walked right up to Mina. Do you hear her? She said, pointing at me. She thinks saying stop changes things. Mina whispered again. Please don't do this. Kara ignored her completely. Instead, she turned to me. You see, she said, this is why people like her don't belong in places like this. Then she leaned toward Mina. Say it. Mina stepped back. I don't understand. Kara's voice sharpened. Say you don't belong here. Mina froze. No, that was the refusal. Small, weak, but real, and that made Kara laugh. Okay, she said. Then we'll say it for you. The group laughed again. Mina's eyes filled completely now. She turned toward me, like she was asking for something I couldn't give yet. And then she whispered, Why is nobody stopping this? That question stayed in the air longer than the laughter. As Mina stood there shaking, Kara looked past me again, at the same direction she had looked earlier, at something outside the school, and for the first time her smile didn't feel playful. It felt timed, like she knew something was about to arrive, and then she said quietly, You're about to understand why no one stops anything here. Mina was still shaking when Kara turned her attention back to me. Oh, wait, Kara said slowly, stepping closer to me now. We got distracted. The crowd shifted. I felt it immediately. This was no longer about Mina. This was about resetting control. Kara tilted her head. Belle, right? I didn't respond. That made her smile. You always do that, she said. Like silence makes you important. One of her friends laughed behind her. She thinks she's mysterious. Kara pointed lightly at my bag. You know what I think? I think you're one of those girls who acts broke on purpose. Mina whispered behind her, barely audible. Please, just stop. Kara didn't even look back. No, stay here. Watch. Then she stepped closer to me. You don't dress like you belong here, she said. You don't talk like you belong here. So explain it. I said quietly, move. That was the first time I spoke sharply. The crowd reacted instantly like they were waiting for that. Kara smiled wider. Oh, she has a voice. She turned to the others. Did you hear that? She has a voice. Laughter. Mina flinched. Kara leaned in again. Say it properly then, tell us why you're here. I looked at her, still calm. I said move. A pause, then Kara nodded slowly like she'd just been given permission. Oh, she said softly, so you want it like that. She turned slightly. Okay. And then she did something worse. She didn't hit me. She didn't shove me. She turned away from me completely and walked back to Mina instead. Mina stepped back immediately. No, please. Kara grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to break anything, just enough to own the moment. Let's finish what we started, Kara said. Mina's voice cracked. I didn't do anything to you, Kara smiled. Wrong. Then louder for everyone. You exist here. Mina shook her head. Please stop, please. I stepped forward again. Let her go. Kara didn't even look at me. Instead, she squeezed Mina's wrist slightly tighter. Or what? She asked calmly. Silence. No teacher came, no intervention, nothing. Kara finally looked at me. Oh, wait, she said. You're still here. Then she smiled. Tell me, Belle, what are you going to do? Mina whispered again, breaking now. Please, someone. Kara leaned in toward her ear. Say it, she whispered. Mina shook her head harder. Kara's voice stayed soft. Say you don't belong here. Mina froze. Tears came instantly now. I don't. Kara released her wrist slowly like she had won something. That's better. Then she looked back at me. See, she said. People like her know their place. Mina collapsed slightly to the side, trying to steady herself. I stepped forward again, but before I could speak, Kara raised her hand slightly, not to stop me, to signal something behind her. Two girls moved in closer, blocking me, not touching, just positioning, control through space. Kara tilted her head. You're starting to annoy me, she said lightly. Then she looked past me again, at the same direction as before. At something outside the school, her smile changed, subtle like confirmation. Then she said, He's here. And Mina whispered, barely audible through tears. Who is here? Kara didn't answer. She just smiled at me like the real game was about to begin. Kara didn't move after she said it. He's here. It wasn't loud. It wasn't for the crowd. It was for herself, like she'd been waiting for that exact timing all day. Mina was still trembling beside her. Who is here? Kara finally looked at her, almost bored now. Someone who actually decides things. I followed her gaze this time, outside the gates. That same black car from before. But now the door was open. A man stepped out. Not a teacher, not police, not school staff. Just someone the air around the school seemed to react to. And suddenly, Kara straightened her posture. That alone told me everything I needed to know. He mattered. The usual noise of the courtyard softened. Not everyone noticed him consciously, but people felt him. Teachers near the entrance stopped talking. Even the girls who were laughing earlier went quiet. Kara smiled slightly without turning her head. Don't look so confused, Belle. I didn't answer. Mina whispered behind her. I don't understand what's happening. Kara finally let go of her performance tone. Of course you don't, she said simply. Then she walked a few steps forward, toward me, not Mina anymore. This is where people like you find out what kind of school you're actually in. She stopped in front of me again, but now her voice changed, lower, controlled. You've been annoying me for days, she said. One of her friends laughed behind her. She thinks she's untouchable. Kara tilted her head. You don't respond properly, you don't react properly. You don't even defend yourself properly. Then she leaned in slightly. That's why people test you. I finally spoke. Move. She smiled instantly. There it is again. Then louder so Mina could hear too. She keeps saying move like that means something here. Mina flinched. Kara turned slightly toward her. You're still crying, she asked casually. Mina wiped her face quickly. Please, I just want to go home. Kara nodded slowly. That's the problem with you people. Then she looked back at me. You think anyone here is going to choose you over pressure? Silence. Not mine, theirs, because someone outside had just entered the gate, and everything inside was now reacting to that fact. Footsteps, measured, not rushed, not hesitant. Kara didn't look back yet, she didn't need to. I told you, she said quietly. People like him don't come here for nothing. Mina whispered. Who is he? Kara finally smiled fully now. You'll see. The man stopped near the entrance of the courtyard. One teacher approached him quickly. A short exchange I couldn't hear fully. Then the teacher's face changed. That was the first real visible crack. Kara stepped slightly to the side, still watching me. You know what I like about this moment? She said. I didn't answer. She continued anyway. Everyone thinks they're safe until someone like that shows up. Mina looked between us. What did I do? Kara ignored her. Instead, she pointed slightly at me. He's asking about her, she said. That landed differently, not like gossip, like confirmation. Kara turned her head toward the entrance again, then smiled. And now it starts. The man began walking toward us, slow, direct. Every student nearby started noticing now. Whispers spread, teachers stiffened. Kara didn't move. She just looked at me and said softly, You should have behaved differently. Mina whispered again, broken now. Please, I don't understand any of this. Kara finally stepped back and said, You're about to. The man was now only a few meters away, and for the first time, Kara wasn't looking at me like I was a target. She was looking at me like I was about to be identified. The man stopped just inside the courtyard. Not rushed, not hesitant, like he already knew exactly how far he needed to come before everything aligned. Kara didn't move, but I noticed something small. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. Not fear. Control maintenance. Mina whispered again behind her, barely holding herself together. I don't understand what's happening. Kara didn't even look at her this time. Stay quiet, she said softly. Just watch. That tone wasn't for a student anymore. It was for someone she thought she had authority over. A teacher approached the man quickly. Can I help you? The teacher asked, forcing professionalism. The man didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned, not the building, not the teacher, the crowd, then me. That pause lasted less than a second, but it changed everything in the air. The teacher followed his gaze and hesitated. Is there an issue with a student? She asked. The man finally spoke. Yes, one word, flat, and suddenly the teacher's posture shifted, because that wasn't a complaint. That was a confirmation of authority entering the system. Kara stepped forward slightly now, still calm but less playful. You're earlier than expected, she said toward the man. That was new. That meant she knew him, or at least knew of him. The man looked at her briefly, then ignored her, and that hurt her more than any insult could. Mina whispered, Belle, what is this? I didn't answer, because I was watching something else. The way the man's attention didn't shift around the crowd, it stayed fixed, like he was verifying something. Kara tried again. You don't need to make a scene here, she said, still composed, still trying to control the frame, but the man walked past her slightly, and that's when her voice tightened. Excuse me. No response. A teacher stepped in nervously. Sir, if there's an issue, we can discuss it in the office. He finally spoke again. I already did. That sentence landed heavy. The teacher froze. Kara's smile faded slightly. Mina stepped closer to me without realizing it. What is going on? She whispered. The man finally stood a few steps from me, not touching distance, but close enough that I could feel the shift in focus. He looked at me properly now and said something very simple. Belle, not a question. A confirmation, that was when I felt it. The entire school had just reclassified me in real time. Kara noticed. Her voice sharpened slightly. Wait, she stepped forward. You know her, she asked. The man didn't answer her. Instead, he continued looking at me, like verifying years of missing information in seconds. Mina whispered again behind us. You know her. Now even she was confused. Because the version of me they had been attacking was no longer just a student in the frame. Kara laughed once. Short, not natural. You're not serious, she said. She's just... The man finally turned his head toward her and stopped her mid-sentence. Not by raising his voice, not by threat, just presence. Kara didn't finish her sentence. That silence changed her expression for the first time. The teacher from earlier spoke carefully now. "Sir, we need clarity. Are you family, guardian?" The man paused, then said, "I'm the reason she's here." That sentence didn't explain, it positioned, and the entire courtyard reacted without sound. Mina took a step back. Kara blinked once. Slowly, that was the first time she didn't have an immediate response. Kara forced a small laugh. "You're involved with her," she said. "That explains a lot." The man finally looked directly at her again and said, "No," one word again, but this time heavier. Then he added, "You are." That landed wrong, even the crowd felt it. Kara's expression tightened. "What does that mean?" she asked. No answer, not yet. Because now the environment itself had shifted from school discipline to investigation energy. Mina suddenly whispered out loud, almost unintentionally, "Belle, did you do something?" That question wasn't accusation. It was confusion collapsing. I looked at her, and for the first time, she looked like she was realizing she had been standing next to something much larger than bullying. Kara turned sharply toward her. "Don't talk to her," she snapped. But even that sounded weaker now, because authority had entered the space, and Kara could feel it slipping. The man took one step forward, then another. Now he was between Kara and me, not physically blocking, but structurally changing the scene. He looked at me again and said quietly, "You weren't supposed to be found like this." That sentence ended everything that came before it. Kara froze. Mina stopped breathing for a second, and I realized something very simple. This wasn't the beginning of a confrontation. This was the continuation of something that started long before this school ever existed. The man finally turned slightly toward Kara and said, "Now tell me who gave you permission." The courtyard didn't move after he said it. "Now tell me who gave you permission." It didn't sound like a threat. That was the problem. It sounded like procedure, like the question had already been asked somewhere else before it reached here. Kara didn't answer immediately. For the first time since I'd seen her, she didn't have a prepared line ready. Mina was still standing slightly behind me, whispering under her breath. "Belle, I don't understand. Why is he asking that?" I didn't answer her, because I was watching Kara, and Kara was watching him like she was recalculating him in real time. Kara forced a small laugh. "This is getting ridiculous," she said, turning slightly toward the teacher instead of the man. "He just walked in here and what demands explanations about a student?" The teacher hesitated. The man didn't react. That silence hit harder than anything else. Kara stepped forward again. "I don't know who you think you are," she said, voice sharper now, "but this is a school issue." The man finally looked at her properly and said, "No, just that." Kara blinked. "What do you mean, no?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't move closer, but said, "This stopped being a school issue when she was locked in a room for hours." Silence. Mina flinched slightly. I didn't move. Because that sentence changed the classification of everything. The teacher stepped forward quickly now. "Sir, we can investigate if something happened." The man interrupted without looking at her. "You didn't." That landed clean. The teacher stopped speaking mid-sentence. Kara turned sharply toward her. "Wait, what is he talking about?" she snapped. The teacher hesitated. I wasn't aware of," the man cut in again. "You were notified." That was when the teacher went quiet completely. Mina whispered behind me again. "This is not normal." I finally spoke to her. "No," that was all, because now even I could feel it shifting. This wasn't bullying anymore, it was exposure. Kara exhaled sharply. "This is insane," she said, forcing confidence again. "She's a student, things happen, kids exaggerate." The man looked at her again. And for the first time, his voice changed slightly, not louder, colder. "Say that again." Kara paused. "What?" "Repeat what you just said." Silence. Kara tried to recover. "I said kids exaggerate. That's what they do." The man nodded once, slow, like confirming something, then said, "Interesting." That single word made her shift slightly, because it didn't sound like disagreement. It sounded like evaluation. Mina suddenly spoke again, unintentionally. "Belle didn't exaggerate, she didn't even talk much." Kara snapped her head toward her. "Shut up." But Mina didn't stop now. Her voice shook. She just sat there most of the time. Kara stepped closer to her immediately. Did I tell you to speak? Mina backed up slightly, but the man turned his head toward Mina briefly and asked, Did you see anything? Mina froze. I saw them lock her in a room. Kara's face tightened instantly. You're lying, she said quickly. Mina shook her head. No, I saw it. That was the first crack that wasn't controlled anymore. The man finally turned fully toward Kara and said, Tell me your full name. Kara hesitated. What? Your full name. Kara laughed nervously. Why would I? He didn't move, just repeated. Your full name. The courtyard went silent again. Even students who weren't involved were now fully watching. Kara's confidence dropped slightly. Kara Mitchell, she said finally. The man nodded once, then said, And your family? That question made her stop completely. For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. Kara crossed her arms quickly. My family has nothing to do with this. The man nodded slightly. That's where you're wrong. Silence hit again. Mina shifted closer to me without realizing it. Kara forced a laugh. This is unbelievable. You're seriously doing this in front of everyone. The man looked around the courtyard, then said, They already saw enough. That sentence changed the energy again, because it implied the audience wasn't the problem. It implied the record already existed. The teacher finally spoke again, carefully. Sir, if there's a serious allegation, the man interrupted without looking. It's documented. That word changed everything. Kara's face tightened. Documented, she repeated. Yes, she stepped forward slightly. By who? The man looked at her directly. People who don't need your permission to observe. That made her stop. Mina whispered behind me again. Belle, what is happening? I didn't answer, because now even I could feel the structure underneath this moment. Kara turned slightly toward the crowd. You people are just going to stand here and listen to this. No one answered immediately. That silence hurt her more than anything else. She turned back to the man. This is harassment, she said sharply. He nodded. No, just that again. Kara's voice rose slightly now. You can't just walk in here and, he interrupted. I already did. Silence. Then he stepped one pace forward, and the entire courtyard reacted without sound again, because now distance was changing. The man looked at her and said, Your family was informed about oversight weeks ago. Kara blinked. What oversight? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked briefly at me, then back at her, and said, The kind that tracks patterns like this. Kara's expression changed slightly. Not understanding, not yet fear, but confusion starting to win. Mina whispered again. Belle, are you in trouble? I finally looked at her. No, that was the first time I said it firmly, because I was starting to understand something too. This wasn't me being exposed. This was something else being connected to me. Kara laughed again. This is insane, she said. She's just a student. You're acting like she's... The man interrupted again. She's not just a student. Silence. That landed differently. Kara froze for half a second, then said, Then what is she? The man looked at her directly and said, The reason I'm standing here. That was the first time Kara didn't have a response immediately. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. The man turned slightly toward the school entrance, then said, This stops now. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten, didn't ask, he just stated it, like it already had approval somewhere above this moment. Kara whispered, almost to herself, No, this can't be. Mina grabbed my sleeve slightly. Belle, I don't know what's happening. I finally looked forward, because now I understood something very clearly. Whatever had been happening to me inside this school was only a small part of a much larger system that had just arrived. The man looked at Kara one last time and said, You're going to explain everything you did. Then he added, Starting with the storage room. The moment he said it, the courtyard didn't just go quiet. It locked. Like every sound decided it didn't want to exist anymore. You're going to explain everything you did, he said. Then, slower, starting with the storage room. Kara didn't move at first. Neither did anyone else. Even Mina stopped breathing for a second. I could feel her fingers tighten slightly around my sleeve like she needed something stable to hold on to. Kara let out a short laugh, but it didn't land right. It sounded forced even to her. This is ridiculous, she said again, but softer now. There's no storage room incident. She's exaggerating. The man didn't react. He just looked at her, waiting. That silence was worse than interruption. The teacher finally stepped forward again, voice tight. Sir, if you're referring to a disciplinary misunderstanding. The man turned his head slightly toward her. No, just that. The teacher stopped immediately. He continued. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Kara's jaw tightened. You're making a huge deal out of nothing, she said quickly. She was annoying us. It was a joke. Mina suddenly spoke behind me, voice shaking. I was there. Kara snapped her head toward her. Don't start. But the man raised a hand slightly. Not toward Kara, toward Mina, a signal to continue. Mina hesitated, then whispered. She was locked in there for hours. Silence again, this time heavier. Second crack, the word HOURS. Kara immediately interrupted. That didn't happen. Mina flinched but kept going. It did. I remember checking the time because I thought she'd come back. Kara stepped forward. You're confused. Mina shook her head quickly. No, I'm not. The man looked at Kara again and asked calmly. Do you deny she was locked inside? Kara answered too fast. Yes. That speed gave her away. Even she felt it, because the man didn't respond immediately. He just nodded once, like he had expected that answer. The teacher's phone buzzed. She looked at it, then froze. Kara noticed. What? She demanded. What is it? The teacher didn't answer. Kara stepped closer. Give me that. The teacher hesitated. The man spoke again without looking at anyone. Let her read it. The teacher swallowed, then turned the phone slightly. Kara leaned in, and her expression changed instantly, not fear yet, but recognition of something she didn't control. What is this? She whispered. Mina leaned forward slightly too. I didn't move, because I already knew something was shifting outside this courtyard. Kara looked up. This is private, she said quickly. This shouldn't even exist. The man cut her off. It exists because it had to. Kara laughed once. This is insane. You're acting like... He stepped forward one pace, and she stopped mid-sentence again, not because he shouted, because he didn't need to. The man looked directly at her now, and said, You were observed before this school ever became involved. That sentence changed the air again. Kara blinked. What? He continued calmly. Patterns don't start at the surface, they repeat. Kara shook her head. This is harassment. I don't even know what you're talking about. The man nodded slightly. You will. Mina suddenly stepped forward again. I saw them lock her in, she said again, louder this time. Kara snapped. Stop talking. But Mina didn't stop anymore. I saw it. I told a teacher. Nothing happened. That landed differently. The teacher behind them shifted uncomfortably. Kara turned sharply toward her. You were told, she demanded. The teacher hesitated. I don't remember the exact, Kara interrupted. So you didn't act. Silence. That was the first time responsibility stopped being abstract. The man spoke again. That incident was reported. Kara froze slightly. Reported to who? He looked at her directly. To people who don't ignore escalation. That word hit her wrong. Escalation. Because now it wasn't a school issue. It was a classified chain. Mina whispered, barely audible. Belle, why are they talking like this? I finally spoke again. I don't know. And for the first time that was true. Kara forced a breath. This is ridiculous, she said again, but weaker now. She's just a girl, you're acting like she's... The man interrupted. She is. Kara paused. What? He looked at her. And you are not in control of this anymore. That sentence broke something in her expression. Not fully, but enough. She stepped back slightly. No, she said quietly. Mina looked between them. Even she could feel the reversal now. Students nearby started whispering, not loudly, carefully. What is happening? Why is she shaking? Who is that guy? The teacher tried again. Sir, if this is legal involvement, the man nodded. It is. That was the first confirmation that made everyone fully stop guessing. Kara whispered again. This is not possible, but her voice had lost volume now. The man finally said, You were not chosen randomly for this environment. Kara looked up sharply. Chosen? He nodded once. Placement was intentional. Silence. Then he looked at me again and said, She was never meant to be hidden in plain sight for long. Mina turned toward me slowly. Belle, Kara whispered the same thing under her breath, but this time it wasn't mockery, it was uncertainty. The man turned slightly toward the teacher and said, "Call administration, now." Then he looked back at Kara and added, "This stops being local from this moment." The teacher hesitated for half a second too long. "Call administration, now." That wasn't a request anymore. It was instruction being placed above her role. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for her phone. Kara noticed it immediately. "No," she said sharply. "Don't do that." The teacher paused. That pause mattered, because it showed she was still choosing, and Kara wasn't used to people choosing against her. The man didn't look at Kara when he spoke again. "This stops being local from this moment." Kara let out a short laugh, but it didn't land like before. "This is ridiculous," she said again, stepping forward. "You can't just walk into a school and—" he interrupted calmly. "I already did." Silence. Again. But this time it didn't feel like confusion. It felt like alignment shifting under everyone's feet. The teacher finally dialed. Her voice was low. "Yes, I need administration at the courtyard immediately." Kara turned toward her sharply. "Are you serious?" The teacher didn't answer. That was new. Kara's eyes flicked back to the man. "You're escalating something that doesn't need to exist," she said quickly. "She was locked in a room. It was handled." Mina flinched instantly. "That's not true," she said quietly. Kara snapped her head toward her. "Stop talking." But Mina didn't step back this time. "I told them," Mina said, voice shaking but steadying. "I told a teacher that day." Silence. Kara stared at her, then at me, then back at the man. And something in her expression tightened. The man finally looked at Kara directly. "You said it was handled." Kara lifted her chin slightly. "It was." He nodded once. "By who?" Kara hesitated for the first time. "The school." He didn't react, just repeated slowly. "The school handled a student being locked in a room for hours." Kara didn't answer, because repeating it out loud made it sound worse than she intended. Mina whispered behind me. "When I told them, they said they'd look into it." That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else. Footsteps, fast, then controlled. 2 administrators entered the courtyard. One looked immediately at the man, the other scanned the crowd. "What's going on here?" one asked. The teacher quickly stepped forward. "There's been an escalation regarding student safety concerns." Kara cut in immediately. "This is exaggerated." The administrator turned slightly toward her. "Let me hear from everyone." Kara spoke quickly. "She's making false claims. Nothing happened." Mina's voice came out immediately after. "It did." 2 voices, one denial, one confirmation. The air tightened. The man finally addressed the administrators. "This has been documented prior to today." That made them pause. "Documented how?" one asked carefully. The man didn't answer immediately. He looked at me briefly again, then back at them. "External review flagged repeated behavioral targeting patterns." Kara blinked. "What?" Mina whispered. "Behavioral what?" The administrator frowned. "That's not something we've been informed of." The man nodded. "That's the issue." Silence. That word again. Kara exhaled sharply. "This is insane," she said again, but now her voice wasn't strong. "You're acting like she's. She couldn't finish it, because every label she tried didn't fit anymore. The man looked at her and said, "You assumed authority where none was granted." Kara shook her head. "I didn't assume anything." He nodded once. "You did." Silence. Then he added, "And now you are reacting to loss of control." That landed hard. Mina suddenly stepped forward again. "She was locked in there," she said again, louder. "For hours, I waited. She didn't come out." The administrator turned toward Mina. "Did you report this immediately?" Mina hesitated. "I told a teacher." The teacher behind them shifted uncomfortably. "I don't recall the full report being escalated." The man cut in. "That is incorrect." Silence. Kara turned sharply toward him. "You keep saying things like you know everything. Who are you?" That question finally landed without sarcasm, just fear underneath. The man looked at her for a long moment, then said, "I am the reason she is not invisible anymore." Kara frowned. "That doesn't answer anything." He nodded. "It does." Silence again, but this one felt final, because it didn't invite argument, it removed relevance. Kara stepped back slightly. "No," she said quietly. "No, this is not happening." Mina looked at her. For the first time, not afraid of her, just watching her fall apart. The administrator spoke carefully. "We need to review all reports and student records immediately," Kara snapped. "There are no reports." The teacher hesitated. "There were notes." That was enough. Kara turned sharply. "What notes?" The teacher didn't answer, because now even they were unsure what admitting anything meant. I hadn't spoken much, but now I felt it. Everyone was recentering around me without asking me to move. Kara noticed it too. She looked at me directly, for the first time without control in her voice. "You're enjoying this?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer immediately because I wasn't, but I also wasn't what she thought anymore, so I simply said, "No." That was enough. Because it wasn't emotional, it was final. The man stepped slightly forward again and said, "This will proceed beyond school authority." Kara shook her head. No, you can't just," he interrupted. "I already did." Silence. The administrators exchanged looks. The teacher looked down. Mina stood frozen. And Kara finally stopped speaking. Not because she had nothing to say, but because nothing she said mattered anymore. The man looked at me again and said quietly, "You don't need to stay here any longer than necessary." Then he turned toward the administrators and added, "She is coming with me." The courtyard didn't react immediately. It took a second for the sentence to fully register. "She is coming with me." The man didn't repeat it. He didn't explain it. He just stated it like it was already approved somewhere above the school's authority. One of the administrators blinked. "Sir, we can't just release a student into..." The man turned his head slightly. "You already failed to control what happened to her here." Silence. That sentence didn't accuse. It confirmed. Kara looked at me immediately after that. Not the man. Me. Like she was trying to reattach meaning to me before I disappeared from her framework entirely. "No," she said quickly. "No, that's not happening." Her voice wasn't confident anymore. It was reactive. The man didn't look at her. He just held up a hand slightly, not toward her, toward the system, and everything slowed again. One administrator stepped forward. "We need formal procedure before any student leaves with..." The man interrupted. "Procedure already occurred." The teacher frowned. "When?" The man answered without hesitation. "When she was placed here without protection protocols being enforced." That word, protocols, changed the atmosphere. Kara's expression tightened. "What protocols?" she snapped. No one answered her. That was the first time she wasn't part of the conversation. Mina suddenly stepped forward again. "She didn't have anyone," she said quickly. "She was alone in there. Nobody checked." The teacher looked uncomfortable. I didn't receive escalation confirmation." The man cut in again. "That is not accurate." The administrator's voice sharpened slightly. "Sir, we are not disputing concern, but you cannot override school authority." The man finally turned fully toward him and said, "I already have." Silence. That landed differently this time because it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like completion. Kara stepped forward again. "This is insane," she said, but quieter now. "You can't just take her. She's a student here." The man looked at her for the first time in a while and said, "She is not yours to define." That sentence hit her harder than anything before it. She shook her head slightly. "You don't even know her." The man nodded once. "I know enough." Kara laughed once, but it broke halfway. No, you don't," he interrupted. "I know she was locked in a storage room and left there while others chose silence." That made her stop completely, because it wasn't accusation anymore. It was record. Students nearby weren't speaking loudly anymore. They were watching like they had stepped into something irreversible. One of them whispered, "Is she actually going to leave?" Another replied, "I don't think this is school stuff anymore." Mina turned slightly toward me. "Belle," she said softly, "are you okay?" I didn't answer immediately, because okay didn't even feel like the right category anymore. I just said, "I'm here," that was all. The man stepped slightly closer to me, not touching, just aligning. Then he spoke quietly. "You don't belong in a system that allowed this to go unnoticed." Kara shook her head again. "This is ridiculous. She's not. She's just..." She stopped, because she couldn't finish any version of the sentence anymore without it sounding weak. The man looked at her and said, "You are reacting to the removal of assumed control." That made her go still. One administrator finally spoke more carefully. "Sir, if you are representing external authority, we need formal identification." The man nodded once, then simply said, "It's already been verified." That was all. No explanation, no display, just confirmation that the system already knew who he was. Kara whispered again. "No, this doesn't make sense." Mina stood beside me quietly now, not crying anymore, just watching everything collapse into something she couldn't categorize. The man turned slightly toward Kara again and said, "You built confidence on lack of consequence." Kara's voice came out sharper now. "That's not true," he nodded. "It is." Silence. Then he added, "And it ends here." That was the first time Kara didn't respond immediately. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, because there was nothing left in her script that matched this version of reality. I didn't step forward. I didn't need to. Everything had already shifted around me. Mina whispered again. "Are you really leaving?" I looked at her. "I don't know yet." That was honest, because I didn't know what leaving meant anymore. Not after everything that had been revealed in fragments around me. The man looked at me again and said, "You don't need permission to leave what failed to protect you." Silence. Then he added, "Come," not loud, not commanding, just final. Kara took one step forward. "No," she said again, but weaker. "This can't just end like this." The man didn't look at her this time and said, "It already did." As I started walking with him toward the gate, I heard Kara behind me, not shouting, not arguing, just one line. "You're not supposed to matter like this." And for the first time, I didn't feel small hearing it. Kara's voice followed me as I walked. "You're not supposed to matter like this." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It sounded like something slipping out of her before she could catch it. I stopped for half a second, not because she had power, but because I recognized what she meant. Mina stayed behind me, frozen near the courtyard edge. The man didn't turn around. He just said quietly, "Keep walking." So I did. Every step toward the school gate felt heavier than the courtyard, not physically, structurally. Like I was walking out of something that had already decided it couldn't hold itself together anymore. Behind me, I heard whispers turning into broken sentences. "She's leaving. Who was that guy? Did they say storage room?" Then Kara again, sharper this time. "This is not over." But her voice didn't carry the same control anymore. The man finally spoke without turning. "It already is." Silence followed that. Even Kara didn't answer immediately. Mina suddenly stepped forward behind me. "Belle, wait." I turned slightly. She looked confused in a way that wasn't about bullying anymore. It was about loss of understanding. "Are you coming back?" she asked quietly. I paused. That question wasn't simple. Because I didn't know what back meant anymore, the man spoke before I could. "She won't be returning to this environment." Mina flinched. Kara snapped from behind. "You don't decide that." "Who are you?" But her voice cracked slightly at the end. That was new. Kara stepped forward again, trying to re-enter the space between us. "This is still my school," she said quickly. "You can't just remove her, she's enrolled here." The man finally turned his head slightly and said, "Enrollment is not protection." Silence. That sentence didn't argue. It invalidated the foundation underneath her argument. Kara shook her head. "This is insane, you're acting like she's—" She stopped again. Because she couldn't finish anything anymore. Everything she tried to define me as no longer worked. Fourth shift, the man stops at the gate. We reached the gate. The man stopped. I stopped too. Mina stayed behind at a distance now, unsure whether to follow or stay. The courtyard behind us was still watching. The man finally said, "You don't need to look back." I didn't answer, but I did anyway. Kara was standing there, not moving forward anymore, just standing, and watching, not angry now, something else. Part 11-2, "You were never randomly placed here," the man finally spoke again. This time not to the school, not to Kara, to me. "You were never randomly placed here." I looked at him. Mina frowned slightly behind us. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The man didn't answer her immediately. He continued. "There were reasons this environment intersected with your timeline." Silence. That sentence didn't feel like comfort. It felt like structure revealing itself too late. First shift, Kara hears too much. Kara stepped forward again. What are you even talking about? She demanded. Timeline, environment, she's a student. The man turned slightly toward her and said, she was never just that. Kara froze. What? He didn't elaborate, because he didn't need to anymore. The implication was already expanding past what she could control. Mina looked between us. So all of this was planned? She asked softly. No one answered immediately. That question didn't get a direct response, because the truth wasn't simple enough to compress into agreement. The man finally said, it was monitored. That word hit differently. Mina stepped back slightly. Monitored? Kara's voice cut in immediately. That's not normal, that's not legal, that's… The man interrupted calmly. It is when systems fail repeatedly at smaller levels. Silence. Kara laughed again, but it was unstable. This is ridiculous. You're making it sound like she's some kind of… She stopped again, because every label she reached for no longer existed. The man looked at her and said, you built certainty on ignorance of consequence. That sentence landed heavily. Kara's voice dropped. No, but it didn't sound like denial anymore. It sounded like resistance losing shape. The man turned fully toward me now and said, you don't owe explanation to the place that failed its responsibility toward you. Silence. Then he added, come. This time it wasn't a suggestion, but it wasn't force either. It was completion of a process already set in motion long before today. Mina whispered behind us, Belle. I looked at her one last time, and then I said, I'll remember you. Not goodbye, not closure, just truth. As we stepped beyond the gate, I heard Kara one last time behind us. Not loud, not commanding, just broken into something unfamiliar. You were never supposed to leave like this. And for the first time, no one answered her. Kara's voice didn't follow us past the gate this time. It just hung there. You were never supposed to leave like this. Then nothing. The silence after it felt heavier than the sentence itself. We walked a few steps away from the school entrance. Not far, but enough that the air changed. The man finally stopped near the sidewalk. I stopped too. Mina was still visible near the gate, frozen, watching. The man glanced once behind us, then said quietly, she'll process what she witnessed for a long time. I didn't answer, because I was still processing it too, just not in the same way. The world outside the school didn't feel normal immediately. Cars passed, people walked, everything looked unchanged, but I didn't feel like I was inside that system anymore. The man looked at me and said, you're safe now. I paused slightly. That word didn't land cleanly, because it wasn't about physical safety. It was about removal from exposure. I asked quietly, safe from what exactly? He didn't answer immediately. That pause mattered. Behind us, Mina called out once. Belle! I turned slightly. She hesitated, like she wanted to say 10 things but couldn't find the structure for any of them. Then she said, I didn't know any of this, I'm sorry. I held her gaze for a second, then nodded. Not forgiveness, not closure, just acknowledgement. The man spoke again without turning. She will remember truth differently now. Then we walked further. Mina stayed behind. After a few steps, I asked, who are you? This time, he didn't avoid it. He said, I was assigned to monitor escalation pathways involving environments like that one. I frowned slightly. That doesn't explain anything, he nodded. It explains enough for now. That wasn't satisfying, but it was intentional, because he wasn't giving full context. He was giving controlled exposure. Back at the gate, I could still see movement. Kara was still there, talking to someone, fast, then stopping, then starting again. But I couldn't hear it anymore. It was like her world had shifted into a place I no longer had access to. The man said quietly, she is reacting to loss of structure, not truth. I looked at him. What does that mean? He answered. People like her don't lose arguments, they lose systems. That sentence stayed with me longer. We stopped near a quieter street. The man finally turned fully toward me and said, you were not an isolated case. I frowned. What does that mean? He continued calmly. The environment you entered had repeating behavioral patterns across multiple subjects. Mina's voice wasn't there anymore. It was just us now. I asked, so it wasn't just me? He shook his head slightly. No, that word changed something, because it meant what happened to me wasn't personal chaos. It was structured repetition. I asked carefully, "How many?" He didn't answer immediately, then said, "Enough to trigger review thresholds." I paused. "Thresholds?" he nodded. "Yes." That meant it wasn't just observation. It was accumulation, not of emotion, of incidents. I looked back once. The school gate was far now. Kara was still there, but smaller, not physically, structurally. Like she no longer occupied the same importance level in whatever system this was. The man said, "She will attempt to restore influence." I asked, "Will she succeed?" He answered simply, "No." No hesitation, no drama. Just finality. I asked quietly, "So what am I now?" He looked at me for a moment, then said, "Someone who was not supposed to remain unnoticed." That wasn't comforting, but it wasn't threatening either. It was descriptive. My phone buzzed. A message from Mina. "I don't know what just happened, but I'm glad you're okay." I stared at it for a moment, then replied, "I am still figuring it out." Because I was, not emotionally, structurally. The man started walking again. I followed, not because I fully understood, but because standing still no longer made sense inside a system that had already shifted around me. Behind us, the school remained, but it didn't feel connected anymore. As we walked, the man finally said, "There is still one thing you haven't been told." I looked at him. He continued, "Why you were the one they kept targeting." We slowed down near a quiet street corner, not because anything stopped us, but because what he said next required stillness to register. "Why you were the one they targeted." I looked at him. For the first time, I didn't immediately respond, because that question felt like it had been waiting underneath everything since the beginning. I asked quietly, "Why?" He didn't answer right away. That pause wasn't hesitation, it was structure, like he was choosing which layer I was allowed to see first. He finally said, "Because you were an easy target like a lone wolf." I frowned. "That doesn't sound like me." He nodded slightly. "It isn't about you alone." That answer didn't settle anything. It widened it, so I asked again, "Then what is it about?" He looked ahead, not at me, and said, "Control environments test reactions against perceived vulnerability." I paused. "Perceived?" He nodded. "Yes." That word mattered, because it meant what they saw wasn't necessarily what I was. It was what they thought I could be reduced to. I looked back once more. The school was far enough now that it looked ordinary again, but it didn't feel ordinary. I asked, "So this didn't start there?" He answered immediately, "No." That was the first time he gave a direct answer without delay. Then he added, "The school was only one node." That word, node, didn't belong in anything I'd experienced before. I repeated it, "Node." He nodded. "Yes, a connected environment point." I didn't respond, because now the situation wasn't emotional anymore. It was mapped. "And Kara?" I asked. He didn't hesitate this time. "A participant in an unregulated hierarchy." That sounded colder than anything she had ever said to me. I frowned. "So she wasn't just bullying me?" He shook his head slightly. "No," then added, "She was reinforcing structure." That made me stop walking for a second. He turned slightly toward me and said, "People like her don't always realize they are part of systems until they lose control of them." I suddenly thought of Mina. "So what about her?" He answered. "Collateral observer." I blinked. "Collateral?" He nodded. "Yes, unintended witness within controlled environments." That made my chest tighten slightly, not emotionally, but logically, because it meant Mina wasn't part of it, but she wasn't outside it either. We started walking again. The street was quieter now. He spoke again. "The pattern was recognized early." I asked. "By who?" He answered. "External review." That phrase again. It was becoming the backbone of everything I didn't understand yet. I asked, "So this has been watched for a long time?" He nodded once. "Yes," I asked. "How long?" He didn't answer immediately, then said, "Long enough for repetition to be confirmed." That didn't give a number, but it gave something worse. Consistency. I asked quietly, "So it wasn't random?" He shook his head. "No." I stopped walking again. "So what was the point of me being there?" He finally looked directly at me and said, "To observe whether resistance would form or collapse." That sentence stayed in the air longer than anything else. I repeated it. "Resistance?" He nodded. Yes, then added, you did not collapse. That should have sounded like praise. It didn't. It sounded like classification. I asked. So Kara, she was part of testing resistance, he answered carefully. She was part of pressure application. That phrasing changed everything about her role. Not leader, not bully, pressure. I asked quietly, and if I had collapsed? He didn't hesitate. Then the system would have recorded a different outcome. That sentence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like data collection. I looked down for a moment, not because I was emotional, but because the framework of my entire experience had changed in less than an hour. I said quietly, so I wasn't just surviving school. He nodded. No, then added, you were responding inside a monitored structure. That was the first time I didn't know how to translate what I felt into words, because everything I thought was personal wasn't purely personal anymore. The man stopped again, not suddenly, but deliberately. He looked at me and said, there is still one layer you haven't seen. I asked. What layer? He replied. The reason the pattern escalated when it did. Silence. Then he added, and why your removal was accelerated today. He looked at me directly and said, someone inside the system changed your status. We stopped walking again. This time it wasn't distance. It was weight. Someone inside the system changed your status. I looked at him. The status? He nodded once. Yes. The word felt too clean for what I had just lived through. I asked quietly, when? He didn't answer immediately. That pause again. Not uncertainty sequencing. Then he said, shortly before escalation peaked. I frowned. That doesn't make sense. He nodded slightly. It does within systems like this. Why are you talking like some quotes in the books? I got a bit tired of his unclear answers. I asked, so everything today happened because of that? He replied, today was a response phase. That wording made me stop. Response to what? He finally looked directly at me. To a change in classification. Silence, I asked. Was Kara part of that change? He answered carefully. She reacted to it. That wasn't what I expected. I frowned. So she didn't cause it. He shook his head. No, then added. She amplified it. That sentence made more sense in a disturbing way. Kara wasn't origin. She was acceleration. I suddenly thought of Mina again. So she was just watching all of this happen. He nodded. Yes, then added. Uninvolved observers often become reference points in reports. I frowned. Reports for what? He didn't answer immediately. That silence was heavier than the question. He finally said, you'll get to know everything. I repeated it slowly. Everything, there is something else. He nodded. Yes, then added, repeated across environments. That meant this wasn't isolated, not even close. We started walking again, but slower now. He continued. Your presence triggered a different response path. I asked. Different from what? He answered. Expected collapse. That word made me pause. Collapse, he nodded. Yes, withdrawal, silence, or compliance. I looked at him. And I didn't do that. He replied simply, no, I asked. So that's why they escalated. He nodded. Yes, then added, pressure increases when expected outcome fails. I repeated it quietly. Expected outcome, he nodded again. Yes, that meant I was not supposed to resist, not supposed to escalate attention, not supposed to become visible. I asked. So the school, he finished the sentence for me, was one environment of observation. I frowned. That sounds planned, he replied. It was structured. That difference mattered. Planned implies intent. Structured implies system. I asked. So what happens to Kara now? He paused briefly, then said, she loses influence within that structure. I looked at him. That's it. He shook his head. No, then added, she will attempt to reassert control in other environments. That sounded less like punishment and more like pattern continuation. I asked quietly, and me? He looked at me for a long moment, then said, you are now categorized as a non-compliant variable. That didn't sound emotional. It sounded administrative. I repeated it, non-compliant variable. He nodded. Yes, then added, that changes how future environments interact with you. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else so far. He stopped walking. I stopped too. He looked at me and said, there is one final thing you need to understand. I asked, What? He answered. Who initiated your status change? Silence. Then he added, and why it was not reversed. He looked at me directly and said, because it wasn't meant to be temporary. We walked a little further after that. The man didn't immediately continue with explanations this time. It was quieter now, normal street sounds coming back in, cars passing, someone laughing somewhere far off like none of this was happening. I finally broke the silence first. So, you're not going to explain any of it right now? He glanced at me briefly, then ahead again. I will, just not all at once. That felt honest at least. I exhaled. That seems to be a pattern with you. A faint pause. Then, almost like he acknowledged it, you're catching on quickly. I didn't respond to that. A few steps later, I asked, so what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Just follow you? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said something more normal, almost casual. You'll know everything soon, just not in the order you want it. That made me scoff lightly. Great. Love that for me. He actually looked like he almost smiled, but didn't fully. We walked past a small corner store. He slowed slightly like he was deciding something, then said, You haven't asked about your mother in a while. That stopped me for half a second. It wasn't the question itself. It was how casually he said it. I looked at him. That's not exactly a casual topic. He nodded. I know, then added, softer, but you didn't bring her up when everything escalated earlier. That's unusual. I looked away slightly. I guess there was a lot happening. He accepted that without pushing, but then asked something else more direct. When was the last time your life felt normal to you? That question didn't land cleanly. I had to think. Before school changed everything, I said finally. He nodded. That's what I expected. We stopped near a quieter side path. I finally asked what had been sitting in the back of my mind. Why did I even go with you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me like he was checking whether I was asking emotionally or logically. Then he said, because staying there would have kept you inside the loop longer. I frowned. That's not really an answer. He nodded slightly. Fair. Then he added, more grounded this time, you came because, for the first time, someone wasn't dismissing what happened to you as normal. That made me quiet for a moment, because that part was true. At the gate, no one was laughing anymore. No one was minimizing anything. He continued, and because you were already past the point where staying felt safe. I didn't argue with that either. After a few steps, he changed tone slightly. Not interrogation, more like understanding context. So, he said, what was your life like before all this started at school? I hesitated. Why does that matter now? It helps complete the picture, he said simply. I sighed. Normal, I worked a lot, 2 jobs sometimes, shared apartment, bills, constant stress just trying to keep up. He nodded slowly. You were already operating under pressure before entering that environment. I looked at him. That sounds like you're building a case. He didn't deny it. I'm understanding it. There's a difference there. I noticed it. I finally asked. So what happens next for me, realistically? He slowed slightly. You won't go back to that school. I nodded. That part I figured. Then he added, and the situation around your placement will be reviewed officially. I looked at him. Meaning, he answered, people who allowed escalation without intervention will be questioned. That made it feel more real. Not dramatic. Administrative consequences. Still heavy, just not cinematic. I exhaled. And Kara, he paused a moment. She's already reacting to loss of control. That usually continues beyond the initial environment. I frowned. So she's just going to move on and do this somewhere else. He nodded slightly. If left unchecked. That part actually sat worse than anything else. OUNDED, we stopped again near a quieter intersection. I looked at him. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel about all of this yet. He nodded. That's normal. I let out a small breath. Nothing about today feels normal. A short pause. Then he said something more human again. No, it doesn't. That honesty actually helped more than anything else so far. I asked quietly. So what do I do now? He looked ahead. Right now, you rest, you process, you don't rush meaning into things that just happened. I gave a small, tired laugh. That sounds like something people say when they don't have answers. He replied calmly. Sometimes it is. And for some reason, that made it feel more real, not less. He started walking again slowly and said, "You're going to meet someone soon who understands more of your past than I do." I looked at him. "That doesn't sound comforting." He nodded once. "It's not meant to be yet. You're going to meet someone soon who understands more of your past than I do," he said again, like he was confirming timing more than delivering information. I sighed a little. "That line is getting old," he nodded. "Fair." Then he added more quietly, "But this part isn't mine to explain." That's when I noticed it. A black SUV was already parked further down the street. Hazard lights off, no movement, waiting. I didn't ask immediately, but my body already understood the shift. "This is it?" I asked. He gave a small nod. "Yes." Then, almost like an afterthought, "She asked to see you the moment verification matched." That didn't clarify anything, but it didn't feel random either. The back door of the SUV opened before I even fully reached it, and for a second I didn't move, because I knew that shape before I saw her face. Not from memory I could clearly place, but from something deeper. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten before my thoughts caught up. A woman stepped out, not rushed, not dramatic, just still for half a second like she was making sure I was real. And then she said my name. "Belle!" Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I just stood there. Because my brain tried to reconcile now with something that didn't have a proper after. The man didn't speak. He just stepped slightly back. This part wasn't his anymore. I finally asked, quietly, "Who are you?" She exhaled like she had been holding that question for years. "I'm your mother." That sentence didn't hit like in movies. It hit like confusion first. Then recognition tried to catch up. Then disbelief slowed everything again. I shook my head slightly. "That's not, I mean..." My voice stopped halfway because nothing structured was coming out. She didn't rush me. She just said, I know this doesn't land cleanly." A pause. Then softer, "But it's true." I finally managed. "Where were you?" She nodded slightly, like she expected that immediately. "I wasn't hidden because I disappeared," she said carefully. "I was separated through custody disruption and relocation control after your father's network collapsed." That sounded like too many words for a simple answer. I frowned. "That doesn't explain where I was." She nodded again. "It does, just not in simple terms." She stepped slightly closer, not invading space. "There were 2 attempts over the years to locate you directly. Both failed because your records were intentionally fragmented across guardianship changes tied to multiple jurisdictions." I blinked. "So I was basically moved around on paper." "Yes." Then she added, "And the school environment you ended up in was one of the few stable identifiers that matched your age and placement pattern." That was the first time something clicked. "So that's how they found me," she nodded. "Through cross-matching enrollment anomalies with past identifiers tied to your early records." It wasn't emotional. It was procedural, which somehow made it more real. I looked down slightly. "And the girls at school, the ones who kept doing that," she exhaled slowly. "They weren't chosen because of you specifically." I frowned. "That doesn't make it better." She nodded immediately. "I know." Then she clarified. "They were part of a behavioral environment that had repeated escalation flags. Your presence just made that pattern visible faster." I looked at her. "So what happens to them now?" This time she didn't hesitate. "The school will undergo formal review. Individual disciplinary cases are already being documented." I narrowed my eyes slightly. "That sounds very controlled." She gave a small, tired nod. "It has to be." Then she added something more grounded. "Some of them will face consequences inside the school system. Some will be moved to different placements depending on severity. And some will be required to attend intervention programs tied to repeated behavioral incidents." I didn't respond immediately, because it wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment fantasy. It was systems catching up. I asked quietly, "And the families, the ones you mentioned before?" Her expression tightened slightly. "That part is more complicated." She looked down for a second. "Your father's side had unresolved conflict with another network that created the conditions for your separation years ago." I frowned. "So they were involved in all of this?" She nodded carefully. "Indirectly, yes." Then she clarified, "Not everyone, not equally, but enough to create instability when things collapsed." I looked at her. "And now," she answered honestly, There are active legal and structural consequences already in motion. Not emotional outcomes, procedural ones. Investigations, financial accountability, custody clarifications. That word again. Procedural. Everything was procedural, even the chaos I lived through. I stood there for a moment, just absorbing it. Then I said quietly, "So I didn't just get bullied at school." She shook her head slightly. "No." Then she said something that landed differently. "You were placed in an unstable environment while multiple systems were already trying to correct long-standing failures." That didn't feel like comfort, but it felt like truth without performance. I nodded slowly. "I don't know how to process all of this yet." She stepped closer carefully. "You don't have to process it all today." A pause, then softer. "You're here now." And that part, just that part, felt real in a way nothing else had yet. As she looked at me, she added quietly, "And Belle, there's something else you still haven't been told about your father." Her voice softened when she said it. "And Belle, there's something else you still haven't been told about your father." That sentence didn't hit like the others. It landed slower, like my brain refused to process it immediately. I frowned slightly. "I already know enough about him," I said. My voice came out more controlled than I felt. She nodded once. "I know what you were told." A pause, then she added, "But not what actually happened after he left." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she motioned gently toward the SUV. "Let's sit." Not an order, just stability. I followed her. First shift, the first normal moment in too much unnormal inside the car, the silence changed. Outside noise faded. It didn't feel dramatic anymore. It just felt contained. She waited until I was seated properly before speaking again. Then she said, "Your father didn't abandon you." I blinked. "That's not what I was told." "I know," she said immediately. Then she continued carefully. "He was removed from active presence after a conflict escalation involving multiple factions tied to his work and enemies he had been tracking." I frowned. That sounds like an excuse people use when they don't want to say someone died or left. Her expression tightened slightly. "He didn't leave by choice in the way you were made to believe." A pause, then quieter. "He was trying to protect you when everything collapsed." Second shift, the actual chain of events. I leaned back slightly. "Start from the beginning, normal words." She nodded. "I will." Then she said it more simply. "Your father was involved in organized protection and enforcement operations against a network that eventually retaliated." I exhaled. "So the enemy families thing wasn't just emotional drama." She shook her head. "No, it was real structure conflict." I stayed quiet. She continued. "When he realized you and I were at risk of being used as leverage, he attempted to relocate us separately." My voice came out lower. "But it didn't work." She nodded. "No," then added, "Your separation wasn't random, it was forced." Third shift, how she found me, full logical thread, I asked. "So how did you find me then, really?" She took a breath. "Not once. Several times over the years, partial matches came up through administrative overlaps, school transfers, housing records, temporary guardianship filings." I frowned. "That sounds like a paper trail mess." "It was," she said, "and intentionally made that way in some places." I paused. "So you just kept checking?" "Yes." Then she added, "And when the school situation escalated, your behavioral records triggered a cross-reference alert with older identifiers tied to your early documentation." I exhaled slowly. "So the bullying didn't just hurt me, it exposed me." She nodded. "It created enough consistency in reporting to confirm identity linkage." That made it feel disturbingly logical. I looked down slightly. "And the girls, the ones who did it?" She answered carefully. "Internally, the school will classify incidents by severity." Then she added, "Some will face suspension, some formal behavioral intervention programs, and some will have permanent record notations affecting future placements." I nodded slowly. "And Kara?" That name still felt sharp. She didn't hesitate this time. "Kara's family situation is already under review due to escalation involvement and failure to respond to prior flagged incidents." I looked at her. "So she doesn't just walk away from this?" "No," she said simply, then added, "But it won't look like what you expect. It won't be emotional punishment. I have to make sure that they won't be able to hurt us anymore." That made more sense than revenge, but it still felt heavy. I sat back in the seat. For a while I didn't speak. Then I said quietly, "So nothing about my life was actually as simple as I thought." She gave a small, tired exhale. "No," she said, "but it wasn't meaningless either." I looked at her. "That's supposed to help." "Oh, honey, I am so sorry for not coming to rescue you sooner, but I am here now." She hugged me, a warmth that I hadn't felt in years. As the car started moving slowly, she said something quieter, almost like she wasn't sure I was ready for it yet. "There's one last thing you need to see before any of this is considered finished." I turned slightly. "What kind of thing?" She looked forward. "The place where it actually began breaking apart." The car didn't go toward anything familiar. That was the first thing I noticed. No school direction, no apartment area, no city center. Just longer roads, quieter intersections, spaces that felt like they were being left behind on purpose. I finally asked, "Where exactly are we going?" My mother didn't look at me right away. "Somewhere you've never been," she said. That wasn't reassuring. It was precise. I was even having thoughts if she is telling the truth. Is she really my mother? After a few seconds, I added, "Is this going to be another you'll understand later situation?" She let out a small breath. "No," she said. "This time you'll understand immediately. That's the point." That made me more alert than calm. The road changed first. Less traffic, then fewer buildings, then long stretches of space that didn't feel residential anymore. I noticed it before she said anything. "This isn't near anything I know," I said. She nodded slightly. The car slowed near a gated perimeter, not dramatic, not military-looking in the cinematic sense, just controlled access. Neutral structures, quiet security presence that didn't need attention to be effective. I looked out the window. "What is this place?" My mother answered after a moment. "One of the transfer points where I lost you to this world." I frowned. "That still doesn't explain what I'm seeing." She finally turned to me. "This is where documentation and custody paths were separated when everything collapsed." I repeated slowly, "Separated?" She nodded. "Yes." We walked slowly along the side of the building. The place felt quiet, almost forgotten. My mother stopped near a plain metal door, but instead of opening it immediately, she just stood there. Her hand rested on the handle. She wasn't ready. I noticed her fingers trembling slightly. "This," she said softly, swallowing, "this is where everything went wrong." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She let out a shaky breath, not an explanation breath, a holding back tears breath. "When your father had to leave, this was the last place we were supposed to stay together." I stared at her. "You keep saying that like I should remember." Her eyes filled instantly. "I know you don't," she whispered. "You were only 4. That number hit strangely. 4, I crossed my arms a little. "How do I even know you're my mother?" The words came out sharper than I meant them to, but they were honest. She didn't get offended. She nodded slowly. "You shouldn't believe me just because I say it." Her voice broke slightly. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph. The edges were worn. A younger woman, holding a small girl with messy hair and a stubborn little smile. I froze. That's you," she said quietly. Her thumb traced the picture. "You used to refuse pink dresses. You cried if someone tied your hair too tight. And every night you asked your father to check under the bed for monsters even though you pretended you weren't scared." My throat tightened. Those weren't things strangers guessed. I swallowed. "How do you know that?" Her eyes finally overflowed. "Because I was there," she whispered. "Because I held you when you had nightmares." Silence stretched between us. She wiped her tears quickly, almost embarrassed by them. "Your father," she began, voice softer now, "wasn't what people said about him." I looked at her carefully. "What was he then?" She smiled faintly through sadness. "He was dangerous to bad people, but gentle with us." A small breath. "He protected families others couldn't protect, but that kind of life makes enemies." She looked away toward the empty lot. Someone accused him of things he didn't do. Powerful people wanted him gone. When they came for him, he didn't have time. Her voice shook. "He put us on a separate plan so we wouldn't be used against him." I frowned. "So he left us?" She shook her head immediately. "No, he tried to save you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "They attacked before we could reunite. We were taken, separated." She pressed her hand against her chest like steadying herself. I searched for you for years, Belle. Every city, every lead, every rumor. I stared at her, trying to match this woman with the emptiness I'd grown up with. Why didn't you find me sooner? Her face crumpled slightly. Because whoever moved you wanted you invisible. That answer felt painful enough to be real. I shook my head slowly. This is a lot, she nodded. I know. A long pause. I asked quietly, why now? She looked straight at me. Because when those girls hurt you, your name finally surfaced where I could reach it. Her voice softened. I recognized you before anyone confirmed it. Silence again, heavy, messy, real. I looked at her for a long moment, then asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since she appeared. Did you really miss me? She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward carefully, like approaching something fragile, and pulled me into a hug, not dramatic, not perfect, just tight, desperate, shaking. I never stopped looking for you, she whispered into my hair, and for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel like a girl standing alone in a hallway anymore. She pulled back slightly, wiping her face. Your father was known for his kind, yet bold mob cluster. After your father's situation escalated, multiple protective systems attempted to relocate you under temporary guardianship protocols. I frowned. Why multiple? Why can't just you or other family? I asked. Your father's enemies were hell-bent on taking revenge. You weren't just taken somewhere randomly. She shook her head. There were attempts to place you in controlled, safe environments. A pause, but coordination failed. I asked immediately, why? She hesitated for the first time in a while. Because conflicting authority claims were filed at the same time. They made sure I won't be able to see you. I looked at her. So you got pulled in different directions. I was held captive too. I couldn't claim anything. Look at you now, all grow up. She took my hand and leaned towards me. I could see the tears in her eyes. There's someone inside who helped me keep searching, she said gently. She opened the door. You deserve to hear the rest when you're ready. My mother pushed the door open slowly. The room inside wasn't dramatic, just a small administrative office, old desk, coffee smell, papers stacked everywhere. A man stood when we entered. Late 50s, tired eyes, school badge clipped to his shirt. He looked at me like he'd already memorized my face. Then relief crossed his expression. So, you finally met her. I glanced at my mother. Who is he? She smiled faintly. This is Mr. Alvarez. The name hit somewhere familiar. I searched my memory. Then it clicked. The maintenance supervisor, he nodded gently. I fixed lockers, he said, and watched things nobody else wanted to see. My stomach tightened. You knew, he exchanged a look with my mother. We both did. My mother motioned for us to sit. Mr. Alvarez closed the door carefully behind us. No rush. No performance. Just 3 people carrying years of unfinished truth. He spoke first. 2 years ago, your mother came here asking about a missing girl. She had only a photo and a name that had been changed multiple times. I frowned. My name was changed, my mother nodded. They moved you through guardianship transfers, each time under different paperwork. My chest felt hollow, so I wasn't abandoned. She shook her head immediately. Never, Mr. Alvarez continued quietly. I didn't recognize the photo at first, but then I started noticing patterns. He leaned forward. Same group of girls, same target, every year. My hands tightened. Kara, her friends. The laughing, the rumors, he sighed. They rotated victims, but you stayed their favorite. I looked down. I already knew that. My mother spoke softly. I had investigators searching everywhere. Hospitals, foster systems, immigration records. Nothing matched. Her voice hardened slightly. Then Mr. Alvarez called me. He gave a small shrug. I wasn't supposed to. School policy. I looked at him. Why did you? He hesitated, then answered honestly. Because I saw you crying alone in the art room one afternoon. My throat tightened instantly. He continued. You weren't loud about it. You were apologizing to nobody. He looked directly at me. That's not how guilty children cry. That's how abandoned children cry. Silence filled the room. My mother reached into her bag again. She placed a folder on the desk. Inside were printed photos, security stills, school hallways, lockers. The storage room, my breathing stopped. That day, she said quietly, when they locked you inside. My chest tightened. You knew, her voice changed, not soft anymore, cold. Yes, Mr. Alvarez added, I reported it to administration. I laughed bitterly. They didn't care. He nodded slowly. They didn't care because Kara's family funds half this school. My mother's eyes darkened. And because her father is connected to the same network that destroyed ours. The air shifted. Everything connected at once. The bullies weren't random. They were legacy, enemy bloodlines. I looked at her carefully. What did you do? She didn't smile. I waited. A pause. I watched, collected evidence, let them believe you were still powerless. My heart started racing. She opened another file, emails, witness statements, medical reports, audio transcripts. Mr. Alvarez said quietly, your mother didn't attack them. He looked almost impressed. She dismantled them. My mother spoke calmly now. Kara's mother runs the school board charity. I nodded. Everyone knew that. My investigators uncovered financial laundering through that charity, tuition manipulation, recommendation fraud, influence buying. I blinked. That has nothing to do with me. She looked at me gently. They hurt you because they believed nobody important would defend you. Her voice lowered. So I made your existence impossible to ignore. Mr. Alvarez leaned back. Yesterday, he said, 3 different agencies arrived. I stared at him. What agencies? My mother answered. Financial crimes, child protection services, education oversight. My heartbeat accelerated. You reported them? She shook her head slowly. No, a small pause. I gave them proof they couldn't refuse. A knock interrupted us. The office door opened, and Kara walked in, but she wasn't confident. No smirk, no laughing friends. Just pale, angry, confused. Behind her stood 2 adults in suits. Investigators. Kara was brought there by school investigators for questioning at the same time Belle and her mother were meeting with Mr. Alvarez after the incident report triggered an official investigation. She froze when she saw me. You! Her voice carried the same venom. I felt old fear rise, but my mother stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, just present. Kara's eyes shifted to her. Who are you? My mother answered evenly. I'm Belle's mother. Silence. Realization spread slowly across Kara's face. Then disbelief. Then fear. One investigator spoke calmly. Miss Kara Whitmore, we need to ask you several questions regarding harassment complaints, falsified incident reports, and coercion of school staff. Kara laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. Don't you know who my parents? My mother interrupted quietly. Yes, your parents. She slid another folder across the desk. Are currently being questioned downtown. Kara's confidence cracked. Do you think I'm gonna believe a nobody like you? Then she glanced at folder and froze. What did you do? My mother met her eyes without emotion and laughed. ULLC, it will be a breaking news. For the first time, Kara looked small. She glanced at me, not mocking, searching. You told on us. I shook my head slowly. No, my voice surprised even me. I survived you. That hurt her more. The investigators guided her out. No screaming, no dramatic fight. Just consequence walking beside her. The room fell quiet again. I looked at my mother. You did all this for me. Her expression softened completely. I did it because they thought hurting my daughter had no cost. She reached for my hand carefully. And I wanted the world to learn otherwise. I asked quietly, so this is revenge? She shook her head. No, a gentle pause. This is protection. Then she added, revenge comes next. And for the first time, I realized my mother hadn't just found me. She had rebuilt power. And the people who destroyed our family were only beginning to understand what that meant. The door closed behind Kara. Silence stayed in the room longer than expected. I stared at it. Part of me thought she would burst back in laughing, saying it was all a joke. She didn't. I turned slowly to my mother. You said revenge comes next. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she sat down across from me like she was preparing for a conversation she'd rehearsed for years. Mr. Alvarez quietly excused himself. I'll give you 2 privacy. The door clicked shut again. Now it was just us, mother and daughter, finally alone. My mother folded her hands. You deserve to know why those girls targeted you. I felt tension crawl up my spine. They hated me because I was poor. She shook her head gently. No, a pause. They hated you because of your last name, even if you didn't know it. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? She leaned forward. Kara's father, Richard Whitmore, was one of the men who helped destroy your father. The room felt smaller. I blinked. So this wasn't random bullying. No, she said softly. It was inheritance. My mind raced through memories, the whispers, the rumors, the way teachers never intervened, the way Kara watched me like she already knew something. They knew who I was. My mother hesitated. They suspected. My voice rose slightly. And nobody told me. Her eyes filled with guilt. If they confirmed it publicly, you would have become a target again. I kept you hidden until I had power back. I leaned back, overwhelmed. All those years thinking I was invisible, I had actually been watched. She reached into her bag again, another envelope, older, sealed with wax, my name written across it. Belle, my breath stopped. What is that? Her voice softened. This was left for you by your father. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. I read silently. If you are reading this, it means I failed to protect you in person. My throat tightened instantly. But I planned for the day someone would try to erase our family. I looked up. My mother nodded. He knew betrayal was coming. The letter continued. Trust your mother. She understands the rules better than I ever did. I swallowed hard. And remember, power isn't loud. It waits. I lowered the paper slowly. So everything happening now, she nodded. He built the foundation. I asked quietly, what are you going to do to them? She didn't hesitate this time. I'm taking away the thing they value most. I waited. Control. She stood and walked toward the window overlooking the campus. For years, their families used money and influence to ruin others while appearing respectable. She turned back toward me. Tonight that ends. My pulse quickened. How? Her expression changed, not angry, focused. There's a board gala tonight, school donors, trustees, city officials. I blinked. The one Kara always bragged about. Yes, a small pause. And they invited me. I frowned. Why would your enemies invite you? She smiled faintly. Because they don't know who I am yet. A chill ran through me. They think I'm just another investor returning to the city. The realization hit slowly. You're going to expose them publicly. She nodded. No private revenge, no hidden punishment. Her voice lowered. They humiliated my daughter publicly. A breath. So the truth arrives publicly. Cutaway, the bullies realize something is wrong. Retention reset outside the office window. I saw students gathering near the parking lot. Whispers spreading, phones out. Kara stood with two investigators arguing. I couldn't hear her words, but I knew that posture. Panic. Her friends stood nearby. No laughter now. One girl wiped tears from her eyes. Another avoided looking at anyone. The hierarchy was collapsing. I felt something unfamiliar, not satisfaction, relief. Mother and daughter, real moment. I turned back to her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Even after finding me, she walked closer, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Because I wanted you to choose me, she said softly, not follow me out of obligation. Her hand hovered before touching mine. I lost you once. I refused to force my way back into your life. That broke something inside me. I whispered, I thought nobody wanted me. Her face crumpled. I wanted you every day. She pulled me into another hug. This one steadier, less desperate, more real. The next move, she stepped back and checked her watch. We need to leave soon. Where? Her answer was simple. Tonight you stop being the girl they bullied. A pause. And start being the woman they underestimated. The gala hall glittered with chandeliers and expensive perfume. People laughed politely. Champagne glasses clinked. Everyone pretending nothing ugly ever happened in this school. I stood beside my mother wearing a dress she'd chosen for me. I barely recognized myself. She leaned closer. Nervous? Yes, she smiled softly. Good, it means you still care. Across the room, Kara's parents, perfect smiles. Political handshakes, untouchable confidence, until one trustee approached us. Mrs. Laurent, he said warmly, shaking my mother's hand. We're honored you could attend. My heart skipped. Laurent, my father's name. People nearby turned. Recognition spreading slowly. My mother introduced me calmly. This is my daughter, Belle. Eyes shifted toward me. Whispers started instantly. Curiosity rising. Status recalculating. The microphone tapped. The evening host stepped forward. Before dinner, we'd like to welcome a new benefactor supporting educational reform. My mother walked onto the stage. Calm, controlled. The room quieted. She began gently. I came tonight to support students who deserve protection, not politics. Polite applause. Then she continued. But first, I must address something this institution failed to protect. The room stiffened. Kara's parents exchanged looks. My heartbeat thundered. Screens behind her lit up. Security footage appeared. The storage room, the hallway, the girls pushing me, laughing, locking the door. Gasps filled the hall. My hands trembled. No hiding now. My mother's voice never rose. For years, influence shielded cruelty. New slide. Financial records. Donation manipulation. Administrative emails. Names highlighted. Kara's father stood abruptly. This is outrageous. An investigator stepped beside him calmly. Sir, please remain seated. The entire room watched. Power shifting in real time. My mother finished simply. No child should suffer because adults value reputation over truth. Silence. Heavy. Final. And for the first time in my life, everyone believed me. As applause slowly began, one elderly man near the front stood. He stared at my mother with shock, then at me. You're Victor Lawrence's daughter. The room froze again. My mother turned toward him slowly. Yes, the man whispered. Then you don't know what your father really left behind. My breath caught. Another secret, another layer, another beginning. The room hadn't recovered from the exposure yet. People were still whispering. Phones were out. Trustees stood frozen between shock and damage control. And then that old man stepped forward again. He walked slowly toward the stage, eyes fixed on my mother. Not angry, not afraid, almost respectful. My mother recognized him immediately. Her posture changed. Mr. Halpern, she said quietly, so she knew him. I looked between them. Who is he? The man smiled faintly at me. I used to work for your father. My heart skipped. The word father still felt unreal. He turned toward the audience microphone without asking permission. Security hesitated, then stepped back, because suddenly everyone wanted to hear him. Mr. Halpern spoke calmly. Victor Lawrence wasn't just a mob leader. Murmurs spread instantly. He continued. He built protection networks for businesses targeted by organized corruption. When officials failed, he stepped in. My mother watched silently. No interruption, no denial. Halpern looked directly at me. Your father kept records. Insurance against betrayal. My chest tightened. What kind of records? He smiled slightly. The kind powerful people pray never surface. Gasps rippled through the room. Kara's parents went pale. Her father stepped forward angrily. This is defamation. Halpern raised a folder. Then you won't mind if investigators review these. 2 federal agents immediately approached. The shift was instant. Predators becoming prey. I turned to my mother. You planned this too, she answered honestly. I planned the moment truth became unavoidable. A pause. But your father planned everything else years ago. The screens behind her changed again. New documents appeared. Company shell accounts. Illegal lobbying payments. Scholarship manipulation lists. Every advantage Kara's family ever used. Public. Undeniable. People began backing away from Kara's parents like contamination had spread. Social power collapsing in real time. Across the hall, Kara stood frozen near the exit. Her friends whispered frantically. One girl cried openly. Another kept saying, we didn't know. Kara spotted me watching. She walked toward me, slow, uncertain. For the first time since I'd met her, no arrogance, just desperation. Belle, her voice shook. You ruined my family. I felt the old instinct to shrink, to apologize. But something inside me had changed. I answered quietly, no. A pause. You just met consequences. She laughed bitterly. You think this makes you better than me? I shook my head. I never wanted to be better than you. My voice stayed calm. I just wanted you to stop hurting me. Her eyes filled with angry tears. She didn't apologize. She couldn't. Instead, she whispered, you don't understand what happens to people like us when we lose everything. I looked at her steadily. I do. That ended the conversation. Security escorted her away moments later. No dramatic screaming. just a life-shifting direction. The gala slowly dissolved into chaos. Reporters arrived. Trustees argued. Investigators separated groups into questioning areas. And suddenly, the noise faded for me. My mother guided me outside onto a quiet balcony. Cool night air hit my face. City lights stretched endlessly below. She leaned against the railing, finally looking tired. Not powerful, not strategic, just human. "It's over," I said softly. She shook her head. "No," I frowned. "What else is left?" She looked at me carefully. "One last truth." She hesitated before speaking. "The reason you were separated from me wasn't only our enemies." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled. "Someone close to your father betrayed us." The world seemed to tilt again. "Who?" She swallowed. "He's inside." My heartbeat picked up. "The man waiting in that office earlier," she nodded, "Mr. Halpern." Confusion flooded me. "He helped you find me." "Yes, and he betrayed Dad," her eyes filled with pain. "He thought cooperating would keep us alive." The contradiction hit hard. "So he saved us and destroyed us," she nodded slowly. "Both can be true." We returned inside. Halpern stood alone now, watching the investigation unfold. He turned when we approached. His expression carried years of regret. "I suppose she knows," he said quietly. I stepped forward. "Did you give my father's enemies information?" He didn't deny it. "Yes." The honesty stunned me. "Why?" His voice broke slightly. "They had already captured you and your mother. They promised to release you if Victor surrendered." My chest tightened. "And," he closed his eyes, "they lied." Silence pressed heavy around us. He looked at me. "I've spent every year since trying to undo that moment." My mother spoke gently. "He's the reason I eventually found you." I struggled to process it. Anger, gratitude, confusion all at once. Finally I asked, "Why tell me now?" He answered simply, "Because revenge without truth turns you into the same people who hurt you." Investigators approached again. One agent spoke to my mother. "Multiple arrests are being processed tonight. Financial crimes, conspiracy, obstruction." She nodded calmly. No triumph, just closure. The enemies who destroyed our family were collapsing under their own actions, not through violence, through exposure, through patience, through strategy. My father's legacy, my mother's execution. Later, outside the hall, the chaos fading behind us, I asked quietly, "What happens now?" She smiled gently. "Now we learn how to live without running." A pause, she added. "And if you want, we start being a family again." The word felt fragile. "Family," I nodded, slowly. "I'd like that." She squeezed my hand. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel temporary. As we walked toward the car, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifted. Surprise, then seriousness. I frowned. "What is it?" She looked at me carefully. "One of your father's old operations just contacted me." My pulse jumped. "They say someone survived who wasn't supposed to." A pause. "And they're asking for you by name." The story wasn't finished yet. My mother stood still by the car for a second. Her phone was still in her hand. I could tell from her face, this wasn't part of the gala anymore. This was something else. I asked quietly, "Who survived?" She looked at me instead of answering immediately. Then she said, "Someone from your father's old circle." A pause. "And they're not calling me." Her eyes shifted slightly toward me. "They're asking for you." That made my stomach drop. The call she answered on speaker. Static first. Then a man's voice. Low, careful. "Is this Belle Laurent?" I froze. My name, said like it had weight. My mother didn't interrupt. The man continued, "If you're hearing this, then everything has already started collapsing." I frowned. "Who are you?" A pause. Then, "I was with your father the night everything broke." My mother's hand tightened slightly. The man continued quickly. "There's something you were never told about what happened that night. About who actually ordered the betrayal." My breathing slowed. "My mother already told me everything." The man let out a short laugh. "No, she told you what she survived." A pause. "She didn't tell you who she protected." Silence. My mother finally spoke, controlled but sharp. "Stop." The man ignored her. "Belle, your father didn't just have enemies outside." My chest tightened. "He had one inside the family structure." My mother stepped closer to the phone. "Enough." But the man said one last thing. "Ask her about the second name on the separation order." Then the call ended. I turned slowly toward my mother. For the first time, she didn't speak immediately. That silence said everything. I asked quietly, "What second name?" She exhaled, not like she was surprised, like she was exhausted from carrying it. "Belle," her voice softened. There was no single betrayal. My chest tightened. There were layers. I stepped back slightly. "Start explaining." She nodded, slowly. "My father didn't just have enemies," she said. "He had internal protection contracts, people he trusted to safeguard us if things collapsed." A pause. "One of those signatures was mine." I froze. "Yours," she nodded. "But there was another." My throat went dry. "Who?" She hesitated, then said it. "Your uncle." Silence hit harder than any explosion. She continued quickly now, like ripping off something painful. "He believed cooperating with your father's enemies would stop a full war. He thought sacrificing parts of the structure would save the rest." My voice came out sharper than I expected. "So he helped them take me." She didn't deny it. "Yes." My hands shook slightly. "And you knew." Her voice broke for the first time. "I found out after you were already gone." A pause. "I've been undoing his decisions ever since." We returned inside briefly. Mr. Alvarez was already waiting again. He looked at my mother and nodded once. "It's ready." We stepped into a side office. A live feed was already playing. My uncle, sitting in a corporate security holding room, handcuffed, calm but no longer powerful. An investigator spoke off camera. "You're being charged with conspiracy, child endangerment involvement, and obstruction of protection protocols." My uncle looked directly into the camera and saw me. For the first time, his expression shifted, recognition, then regret. "Belle," he said. My mother stepped closer to the screen. "You don't get to say her name anymore." Her voice was cold now, controlled anger. "You made a decision about a child you didn't own." The investigator added, "All assets frozen, all privileges revoked." No escape, no influence, no recovery, just collapse. Kara's family was already under multiple investigations. Their public image destroyed overnight. School board removed. Donors withdrawn. Legal custody scrutiny opened across their household. Kara herself was gone from the system. Not powerful anymore. Not protected. Just another name in a process she never controlled. Outside again. Quiet night. No cameras, no audience. My mother finally exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. "I'm sorry it took this long," she said softly. I looked at her. "I don't think it could have happened earlier." She nodded. We stood there for a moment, not fixing everything, not erasing anything, just existing without running. Then I said quietly, "What now?" She smiled slightly. "Now you live." Months later, no more school, no more bullying circle, legal cases concluded, records corrected, we moved, new place, quiet life. No headlines following us anymore, just distance, and stability slowly forming where chaos used to be. One evening, my mother handed me a small box. Inside, a key. "To your father's last property," she said. "He left it for you alone." I looked at her. "Will anything else come after this?" She shook her head. "No," a pause. "This is the end of what was taken from you." I nodded. For the first time, it felt true. If you were Belle, would you forgive the uncle? Or would you still want more justice after everything? And do you think Kara deserved a second chance, or not at all?